I think it's really cathartic when you have someone name the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Like if she comes back and she's like, okay, it's not actual anger, it's I felt rejected or I felt betrayed. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to express that betrayal. And I'm feeling hurt by that betrayal. And then that turned into anger. And so then she knows what it actually is. But I think people have a hard time knowing how to deal with anger because they don't know what's underneath the anger. And if they put a name out loud, like it's betrayal, then they know what to do. So she's probably in limbo because she just thinks it's anger, but it's not, right?
Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Britannia Stowe, joined by my sister and co host, Annika Wilder. Enjoy the show. Sometimes I just get so angry. I could just punch a wall or punch someone's face, but I can't. Have you ever felt that way? You feel your blood boil, maybe when someone's name comes up or they walk into the room? Or have you been angry about something that happened years ago? Of course you have. Anger is a completely natural emotion, yet we feel shame about feeling it. And we often label it as this negative emotion that we shouldn't be feeling, yet we feel it. So, what are we supposed to do? We stuff it down, we ignore it, we suppress it, we act like we're not angry, but inevitably the feeling keeps coming to the surface. But I know a little secret. Anger is a tool, it's a messenger. So let's learn a little bit more about anger together. Good morning, Annika. Welcome. I'm so excited that we're talking about anger.
Yeah, when you said anger is a tool, I took it like how people say people are tools, like, oh, he was such a tool.
Yeah.
Like anger is a tool.
Anger's a tool. Anger is such a douchebag.
That's where my mind went.
Sometimes.
That's how it can feel. It can really feel that way. And people think that anger is the problem and they have very negative thoughts towards anger, but really it's really just a messenger and the problem is usually underneath it. Anger really just covers up a deeper emotion. It's usually an emotion that's not been dealt with and then it comes out in anger.
Yeah, it's like this conversion, right? So maybe it starts as hurt or fear or disappointment or betrayal, right? It's this other emotion that we either refuse to feel or we decide, oh no, we're not allowed to feel that. We don't give ourselves permission to sit or to deal with it. And so we stuff it down, we bury it. And instead of it, planting it and it becoming a flower, it becomes anger.
Yeah, some other emotions that anger can look like is covering up is like grief. Grief is a really big one. If you lose somebody and you're angry about it, it's probably just because you haven't given yourself enough time to grieve, or you might have powerlessness or unresolved losses, or even just like rejection or heartbreak. I mean, there's a lot of different emotions. I mean, there's probably hundreds of emotions, but we often resort to just, I'm just mad.
Yeah, exactly. If you allow yourself to even acknowledge that, right? Some people don't even do that because anger is rarely the first emotion. It's that second emotion or maybe a third emotion. And people aren't always just angry. They usually actually have this other feeling. And then, like you said, they don't deal with it. They decide it's not worth dealing with, they're not important, or they don't have time. And then it comes out as anger down the line. So let's talk about what anger actually is. You mentioned it's a messenger.
Yeah, anger isn't bad, but it definitely gets a bad rap, right? And it's information. It's an emotional alarm system. It's a tool that we can use to help process something that has happened or push us to take action. Anger can actually be very powerful. For example, if someone breaks into your house, you're going to be pretty angry and you're going to all of a sudden have a lot of energy to protect yourself, your family, and your home. So anger can be powerful. It's an information. When we feel anger, anger, it's because we often feel like something doesn't feel fair. It's a boundary is crossed, a need or an expectation hasn't been met, or something needs attention.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we're saying here is, and I know people are like, wait, what are you talking about? But anger is not the problem. Okay. The problem is what we do with it, or worse, what we don't do with it. We often ignore it first, especially as adults. We go, oh, I shouldn't be feeling angry. That's a childish emotion. It's an immature emotion. It's a negative emotion. So we suppress it. And then we end up exploding from it, punching a wall or punching someone's face. I've done both. And then we feel shame. We feel shame for being so pissed off when we really should be learning from it, being curious. That's one of my favorite words, being curious about what this anger is trying to tell us.
Often it's a reaction. So there are triggers that happen in our lives, like an event will happen, and we often have expectations of these events, of how it will, what the outcome will look like, right? And then we place meaning on it, and then we have an emotion, and then it turns into a grievance, and then possibly resentment, and then anger. So anger is like a result of all these ways that we're processing an event that didn't go our way.
Yeah. So this is the anger formula. So Annika just, hit what that formula is, and we're going to go a little bit deeper. So an example of an event could be someone lies to you, or a friend just lets you down. Maybe it's not even a big deal, but they just didn't show up when you expected them to. Your spouse forgets something important, like your anniversary, or you get passed over for a promotion. By itself, the event is actually neutral, but then you have these expectations, and the expectations aren't being met. And that could be, I expected my, friend to be honest, or for my friend to show up. I expected my husband to buy me chocolates and flowers on my anniversary and treat me like a princess, or I expected to be seen and get promoted above my peers. So you have these expectations when this event takes place that is different than what you actually wanted.
Yeah, and then we assign meaning to it. So when reality collides with expectation, we assign these types of meanings like they just don't respect me, or I'm not important, or I'm not enough, or I can't trust people, or I'm being taken advantage of.
Yeah, and then that emotion is created after you've assigned meaning. So that meaning comes first. And that could be some of the emotions we listed before: hurt, fear, embarrassment, rejection, sadness, betrayal. All of these can come up. And most people never fully express the original emotion because we're busy living our adult lives, and maybe we don't feel like it's a big enough emotion to deal with. It's not that big of a deal. I know my friend really is a good friend. They just didn't show up this time, which is a little weird. And we start to rationalize it a little bit. So instead of feeling it, we start to suppress it, or they distract themselves. They avoid it and pretend, everything's fine. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. We're just going to let it roll off our back. But then the emotion doesn't disappear. It
Yeah.
it hardens, right?
hmm Yeah, I was going to say that this is something that I do all the time where I will feel an annoyance. It
Mm.
doesn't start as anger, but I'm annoyed at something. And I'm annoyed because of a behavior or an expectation that wasn't met, or all the things that you had mentioned. And I'm just annoyed. And I'll start feeling angry, and say my husband or someone will say, like, you seem angry. I'm like, I'm not angry, I'm just annoyed. And I'll say I'll finally come out with, well, I'm annoyed because of these reasons, but I don't want to say it in the moment, so I let it fester, and then it turns out to be anger, and other people see it, so they call me out on it, like, no, you're angry. And I'm like, well, I wasn't at first. I was annoyed and I didn't deal with it, and now I'm mad because of these expectations that weren't met, or whatever it was that was annoying to me.
Well, exactly. And my old business partner and old boss, Corey Meyer, used to always say, if you don't speak it, you will leak it. So even if you think that you're suppressing it, or maybe you are dealing with it by not dealing with it, it will come out. It will bubble to the surface and it will come out in a way and at a time that you're not ready for. And so when this emotion doesn't disappear and it hardens, and eventually it can become what I call a grievance. And a grievance is an emotion that it's a wound that never gets to fully heal. It's kind of like having a scab that you keep on picking at, right? And this can build resentment if that grievance, remains unresolved. And resentment is simply a grievance that has accumulated interest. So think of your, bank account, or if you have a bill you haven't paid and you're getting that, past due notice, you're just going to make it a bigger issue to deal with later.
And I've noticed that you can kind of suppress a lot of these. I don't want to say lesser emotions, but I feel like anger just seems so big, but they're all big in our own way. But let's just, for the sake of the podcast, let's just say they're lesser emotions. We can kind of suppress annoyances. We can suppress rejection. We can suppress these like little things, disappointment. But when we do that, they add up. And then, like you said, it turns into these things. And then all of a sudden it explodes. And eventually resentment becomes that anger. And anger shows up all over our body. We might be able to hide the other ones, but if you do kind of a scan on your body to find out if you're angry, I mean, ask yourself if you are clenching your jaw or your fists. Like, do you walk around like this? And you might not even realize. Like, I've seen people drive with one hand like this on their like thigh and the other hand on the steering wheel, right? Or maybe they're furrowing their eyebrows a lot, or maybe their neck feels tight, or they're walking with more loudness in their step, like they're stomping. Like our physical body is just like a roadmap of like what is actually going on, and you can't really hide those things. And then you show up as an angry person because you're not getting out all the other things that you've been holding on to this whole time.
Yeah, and that's why anger feels bigger than the situation in front of us, right? We're not responding to the one event. We're responding to, time after time of annoyances or irritation or even years of unprocessed hurt. So that argument about the dishes isn't usually about the dishes, or getting looked over for this one project or promotion at work is usually not that one thing, but we get set off by it. And because of that event, we think, oh, that's the reason I'm angry. That person is pissing me off. My boss doesn't see me, right? And we assign that meeting, and that volcano will erupt. The pressure has been building because you haven't been dealing with those, what we're calling lesser emotions.
Hmm. Yeah, an example is if I am holding on to a lot of this resentment, which I've kind of talked about before, and then later it comes out because I'm acting like an angry person, right? This is more of a smoke alarm of like what's going on. So I guess to better say it is this, here's a really good example. My husband will be upset about something. He has every right to be upset or angry. But to me, I'll think like he can't really be upset about this thing that triggered the explosion of the volcano, right? So a question you can ask your friend, your spouse, or even yourself or whoever's in your life that is showing these symptoms of anger is, what is really going on? Like, are you really upset about this or is it something else? So it's something that we need to pay attention to. There's something here that needs healing. And the more we push anger down, shame it or judge it or ignore it, the louder it gets.
I love that you brought this up about, your husband has every right to be, angry, and it's usually not about the thing. And if we allow ourselves to, seek to understand and to view the other individual when they are angry. So now we're not talking about our anger, but say someone else who's angry, say our spouse, significant other, or a friend. Instead of being like judgmental, you have no right to be angry, you're being ridiculous. Get to that bottom of it. Ask questions and listen. It's like the five whys. You have to dig deeper and deeper. And when I actually went to go visit our other sister, Johanna, I brought my son Harvey. And the day before we left, my husband blurts out, "I can't believe you're taking my son from me." And I was like, "What?" We've done this before, and you had an option to keep him here, but you wanted me to take him. And then I realized you're not actually that upset that I'm taking your son. There's more to it here. So let me ask some questions. And so I asked him, like, did you want to keep him here? Are you afraid you're not getting enough time with him? He's like, oh, you're going to bring him on an airplane. Oh, are you worried about his safety? Are you concerned something's going to happen to us? Are are you afraid that I'm not going to do a good job as, a mother or a caretaker? Or did you see a news article about a plane crash recently? Just getting to the bottom of it. And then, I realized it wasn't, was a little bit that he was going to miss his son. It was a little bit about safety, but it was also about the financial aspect. And how would I have known that from my husband saying, "You're taking my son from me"? Right?
Hmm.
So, getting to the bottom of it, when you see anger or some of those other intense emotions in others, really seek to understand. And I want to go into a little deeper about this in another episode about listening, because sometimes we don't really listen to what people are saying.
Yeah, I mean, that example is a perfect example of a volcano erupting. There was a lot going on for a long time, and maybe he didn't think they were worth talking about because he didn't want to burden you with some thoughts that he had. But then he kept festering, and then it kept boiling, and then all of a sudden it came out in a way that wasn't actually true. But he's just like, it just erupted. And so it was very smart of you to ask these questions, knowing like, okay, he's angry, but it's not real. There's actually these other emotions we need to talk about and get to the bottom of it. There are roots underneath the anger.
Yes, exactly. And those roots are often these grievances. So what are, some signs that you're holding a grievance? Well, one is you're replaying old conversations. And this is a self-awareness element. You may not even be aware that you're replaying these conversations in your head. Maybe when I first brought up the trip, my husband thought, do we really have the money to be taking this trip? But he didn't, say it. And so he's been thinking it over and over. Or, does she not know that it's really dangerous to fly these days or whatever it might be? So if you're having those old conversations replaying, or maybe you're fantasizing about being vindicated, like, well, one day she'll see, it'll happen to her and she'll understand my emotions, right? So if you're fantasizing about something happening to someone else so that you feel vindicated or validated, or maybe you feel an emotion when a name comes up. This was really big for me when I got out of my abusive relationship. And anytime I heard his name, my chest would get tight, my breath would get short, I would start to sweat, I would maybe get a headache, like it would become almost a full-blown anxiety attack. And it had been years after I had broken up with him and moved away and started trying to build my life. But I actually had so many issues stemming from that relationship that I didn't deal with. And so just his name could trigger something.
Yeah, it shows that there's a lot going on underneath that needs healing. So that's the thing that's actually coming out, and then it comes out as anger because you just haven't healed from this trauma in the past. And just another note on your husband, I think this is really important for women especially to understand that men want to provide and men want to give women what they want. Like so he probably didn't bring up his worry about finances because he wants to provide the trips for you. He wants to provide you being able to see your family. Men want to give women the world. They really do. And so to his credit as a man, a provider, a masculine man, he originally didn't bring up his concern because he didn't want to not provide that for you. That would be emasculating to him. But then that got suppressed. And so that again adds up. So it takes a lot of practice and emotional maturity to understand it's okay to share this feeling, but also understanding why your spouse, partner, friend, sister, whoever in your life are doing those things. It's kind of like the fifth agreement that we talked about. Like be
Yeah,
skeptical but learn to listen. Like
absolutely.
right? So another good episode for people to listen to.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. And, I got a little emotional while you were saying that because it's very tender. And in that moment, all I could see is maybe anger, but really it comes from a place of love. And so, I think we need to consider that when we see, anger come out in other people, but also anger within ourselves. We need to have a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of compassion. And with that, Annika, I would really like you to share a little bit about vocal mapping.
Mhm.
I'm just going to leave it there. Yeah. If you can share a little bit about vocal mapping.
Okay, well, I am privileged to have a genius of a husband. His name is Dan Wilder. He owns Paleos Academy out here in Idaho Falls, Idaho, and he works in the mental health field. And one of his biggest things that he does, it's like a life-changing practice for people. It's called vocal mapping, where it is the coolest thing. You've done it, I've done it lots of times. And there are immersive sessions. You can do little shorter sessions, but basically, what it is in a nutshell is you speak into a microphone, little snippets of whatever it is that you are struggling with or that you want to change. It could be about money, it could be about anger, it could be about trauma, it could be about grief, it could be about your relationships, it could be about your job and success. Honestly, anything. And you speak in the microphone for 10-second snippets. And this technology, this is cool. It's like FDA approved technology. It's all very scientific. There's a lot of stuff that I won't go into, but it basically measures your vocal patterns, and the software helps understand what your subconscious beliefs are. And then you are placed in one of 12 zones. I'm not going to go into all the 12 zones, but one of them is personal to me because I'm often in zone 7. I'm often in zone 7, 8, and 9. And 7 is anger, 8 is fear, 9 and 10. One of them's rigid beliefs. But anyway, zone 7 is anger versus acceptance of change. And a lot of these zones you would think are like the opposite. Like the opposite of anger is joy or being content, or I don't know, the opposite of happy is sad. But that's not how it works in the subconscious belief realm. In this technology, in this vocal mapping exercise, zone 7, the opposite of anger is acceptance of change. It's the idea that we are angry because we are not accepting whatever we want to change. It's like a full grown adult tantrum. Like things are not going our way. We are not accepting that things have changed the way that in a different way than that we wanted. And so now we are angry about it. So basically, it's when we resist reality and refuse to adapt to change, anger builds. Healing doesn't come from pretending everything is okay, it comes from accepting what is true, grieving what has been lost, or courageously deciding how to move forward. So, for an example, anger says, I can't believe they did this. Acceptance says, they did this. Now I need to decide what to do. Anger says, this shouldn't be happening. Acceptance says, this is happening. How do I move forward? What do I do about it? So I think this is a huge eye-opening thing for people that if they really go inward and they decide or they think about their anger, is it because something changed that they wish they didn't? Like a loved one passed away. That's a big change in their life. And that is grief. And they are not accepting that change. So they're angry about it. They didn't give themselves enough time to grieve. And they're angry because of that held on, undealt with emotion. Or maybe there was something else that changed, like maybe you got fired. That's a change and you're not accepting it and you're pissed about it. The moment we accept what is, like Marie Forleo says in her book, make isness your business, and just whatever is, like you said, it's neutral in the beginning of the podcast. If we accept it, if we accept the changes, then we don't have to live in anger, and then we can move on to forgiveness and healing.
I love that you are breaking this down because you did it beautifully. And I actually had the opportunity to do a immersive session with Dan, with your husband, and he is the one who actually taught me about how anger is a tool. He is that genius, that brilliant mind that helped me better understand my anger because anger came up a lot while I was doing a transgenerational healing, trying to heal my trauma, in my life and through my family as I was preparing to have my son. And he showed me that it was not only okay to get angry, but that I was angry, that I was feeling anger, but I was not allowing it to come out. And my body was in panic over it because my body was feeling the anger, but I was refusing to acknowledge that I was feeling the anger. And so there's that disconnect between self. And so that's just another layer that I wanted to throw out there.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, so not only are you placed in these 12 zones and you figure out what your subconscious beliefs are, but then you meditate and receive biofeedback and then it actually rewires your perceptions. So it's a super, super powerful tool, but we wanted to bring up this specific zone because those who are in this zone, which is also, it's cool the way they put it, they also have keys. I want to say it's the key of C. I can't remember, but people talk in their own key. And so if you're in this zone of not accepting change and you're angry, and a lot of it's subconscious, you might think, I'm not angry. But like I said, look at your physical body, look at your other behavior. Are you annoyed? Are you feeling these other things? It can add to anger. And other people might see it before you, but a lot of it is subconscious. So this vocal mapping is super powerful because it catches it before you might even catch it. And then you can reprogram your belief systems, and then healing really begins.
I love that. And, that's what this journey is about healing. It's not about being perfect. It's about better understanding what these emotions are and what to do about it. And I know for me, I was a really angry person. And I remember taking a college course at the University of Utah. I got credit for this course, which was really cool. And it was called Anger Reduction and Understanding Forgiveness or something like that. And I always saw forgiveness from a religious perspective. And because I was leaving, Mormonism and I was kind of like anti-establishment, I wanted to be anti-forgiveness. But it helped me understand that, forgiveness actually it will help me better accept change and to release some of that anger that I was feeling. So I'd like to dig into forgiveness a little bit. I know we had another episode about it, but it's really relevant here. So, what forgiveness is, first of all, it's a choice. You can choose to forgive or not, but it's also a practice. It's a constant exercise. And it's a process. It takes time to work it, to understand it. And it is hard work. It's uncomfortable work because you have to face a lot of these expectations not being met, or losses, or change that you weren't ready for. But it's freeing. It's an act of self-liberation. And it's something that you don't do for anyone else. And this is something that I cannot drill into you guys, enough that, if Annika did something that upset me, if I choose to forgive her or not, it doesn't actually really affect her, but it'll affect me. Forgiveness is for you. It's for you. And I don't actually need an apology from Annika or anyone else who may have wronged me. I don't need their apology. You may get one, but you don't need it because forgiveness is for you.
hmm And forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not excusing. It's not approving. It's not even reconciliation. It doesn't mean you have to trust them again. It's not removing accountability or letting someone back into your life. That is not forgiveness. Forgiveness is deeper. Like you said, it's very personal, it's internal. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you're no longer willing to let it control your future. You cannot forgive what you are still denying what happened. This is why that acceptance piece is so important. Nor can you forgive while insisting they shouldn't have done that or this should have never happened. I acknowledge reality instead of fighting it. That's forgiveness. Acceptance isn't trusting again or that there isn't consequences or that you need to reconcile. So just to kind of talk a little bit about this, like we said before, anger says, I want the past to change. Acceptance says the past cannot be changed. Forgiveness says, I release my demand that it be changed.
Mm, it's so true. And just because we can break this down in some simple terms doesn't mean it's easy. And I know that. And after taking my college course, I was automatically happy and everything was fine. And I forgave everyone, right? No, No, it actually took many, many years of process and being curious and digging deeper, especially because I had so many years of resentment and anger built up. So you have to think about that. If I believe in this, like, the pendulum swings or this rule of opposites, and it's not exact science, but if you were holding resentment for 7 years against someone, it's not going to take 7 months. It's going to take at least half as long, at least 3.5 years before you can move through that. And for some people and some grievances, it can take that full 7 years on the back end. So if you choose to hold an event, in your mind's eye as this grievance and refuse to change and refuse to accept it, and you hold on to it for 7 years, you could actually suffer for 14.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same deal when you're healing your body naturally, right? I mean, so I'm turning 36, 36. Yes, I'm turning 36 this year. And it's taken 36 years of my life to get in this state of health. If I want my state of health to change, like if I want to lose weight or have more energy or be more fit, it is going to take time because I've literally been doing things for 36 years to create this current state of my health. And so give yourself time. Healing takes time, especially when you do it naturally. When you try to infiltrate with, science or medication or try to take shortcuts, it can work short term, but oftentimes it just covers up the symptoms and then you're just doing symptom management. And that can be physically for your health, but also for forgiveness. There's a lot of like quick to forgive type of stuff, or just take this pill for depression or whatever. You're not actually addressing the problem and you're not actually really healing. Nothing against the medical industry, but sometimes those things are too good to be true or too quick. And healing naturally takes time, even in regards to, especially in regards to emotions. I actually think it takes longer to heal emotional wounds than physical wounds.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. I would compare it to, if you're driving your car and you notice that it's leaking oil. And so you're going to run out of oil and then your engine's going to seize. So you pull over, you get some oil, you pour it in, and then you keep going and then it's leaking oil. And you're like, oh, I got to pull over. I got to put more oil in. You're not actually understanding why it's leaking or burning oil. And so you're not actually dealing with the problem. That doesn't mean what you're doing is bad. Putting oil in is good. And so I want to acknowledge that there are things that you could be doing that could be helpful because you're, helping to work through some of the symptoms, but you're not actually getting to the root of the problem. And anger can help point the arrows to that root of the problem. So let's talk about how to use anger as a tool. And we're not talking about the douchebag kind, but the handy kind, a tool that can help fix or alleviate. So when you feel anger, you need to ask yourself some questions. Ask yourself, hold up, am I angry? I might be a little angry right now, and that's okay. Was a boundary crossed? Was a value violated? Did something change unexpectedly? Was there a loss? Maybe there was a conversation that you've been avoiding or you've been repeating in your head. Anger often appears when action is needed. Annika had mentioned earlier in the podcast, if someone breaks into your house, you might get angry and you get this adrenaline and this rush of energy so you can do something. But when we don't do anything, that's when the health problems are created. That's when anger can fester or to blow up, right? So take some action. Sometimes anger is telling you, leave the job. You're not happy here. End the relationship. Or maybe it's as simple as speak up early, speak up, or change the situation. How can you create intentional change? Maybe there's unintentional change taking place, but how can you create change? And maybe there's a change that needs to happen within yourself because anger becomes toxic when it stays just as information and never becomes action.
hmm This is a super important piece, kind of like what I was talking about with the vocal mapping, anger versus acceptance to change. You might be angry because something changed, but it also can mean you're angry because you need to change and you're resisting change. Think of it as like putting up a fight, like I mentioned before. When you're angry, you are resisting and you immediately want to go to fight. Instead, like you said, try to put some action in yourself. Like if something bad happened and you're angry about it, maybe there's a change in yourself that needs to happen in order to move on from it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so there are some healthy ways to, release anger. You need to first let yourself feel anger, but that doesn't mean you have to sit in it. You don't have to bathe in anger every day. There are things that you can do to help you feel your anger. And remember, you have to feel something to let it go. This is really important. So, on the physical aspect, exercise. One of my favorite moves is boxing. And you don't have to go to a boxing gym or even have, punching bag or gloves. You could just shadow box. Like it honestly is so alleviating when you have some of that anger, especially if you're feeling it in your chest, or simply walking, doing breath work or yoga.
And then there's the emotional side of things. Therapy, people love therapy. There's also some powerful practices within therapy, like EMDR or hypnosis, or simply journaling or coaching, talking with trusted friends. I know when I'm feeling angry, Brittany and I both do this like, hey, can I just vent for a minute? And we'll just get it all out. And we don't need a solution. Just the act of venting is like, okay, I'm good. I feel better now.
Yeah, I remember one time I literally like called you and I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And you're like, "I'm good. How are you?" Like I was so intense and I just like kept talking. I think it was 5 minutes straight. And I was like, "I just need to let this off my chest." Blah blah blah. And I just let it go and you were so good. You just let me say all the things and then I felt better. I honestly felt a lot better.
hmm
And there's of course the spiritual side. So, prayer, finding yourself in a quiet space and talking to your higher power, talking to God, talking to the universe, meditation, looking within yourself, finding that zen, feeling grounded, and of course, doing forgiveness work. You may actually think, I don't have anything I need to forgive, but I'm angry. There might actually be some grievances that are built up where you need to, maybe it's not necessarily forgive the other person or forgive the event. Maybe you need to forgive yourself. And
hmm
so allow yourself to find that time for reflection.
Which brings us to our coach yourself segment because this is what we do. This is what the podcast is all about. We are coaches. We coach each other, we coach other women, but our whole mission is to help you coach yourself because there's enough information out there to help you to overcome your own challenges, to empower yourself and to coach yourself. So, if you're angry, it's okay, right, Britannia?
Yeah, it is okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. Recognize it as a signal to dig a little deeper, a sign there's something here. X marks the spot. And allow yourself to ask yourself these questions. Like, what am I really angry about? Even if it feels silly, ask yourself and allow yourself to authentically answer. Maybe there's an emotion that exists under. Ask yourself about it. What boundary was maybe crossed? Or is there a lesson here? Has this happened over and over again? Is there a friend that maybe you need to cut out of your life, or do you need to be better about speaking up? Ask yourself, why am I still carrying? What am I still carrying? And allow yourself to process it. Ask yourself if forgiveness is possible here for the other person or for yourself. And what action? Remember, action is the next step. Anger is that tool, is that messenger, but it only gets toxic when we don't do anything about it. And then ask yourself, is there a world where I could let this go? How would I feel if I let this go? Is it really worth holding on to? I
hmm
heard this quote once. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Anger has a purpose. It's meant to be loud. It's trying to get your attention. So pay attention. It points to the wound and will reveal a lesson. And then anger has served its purpose. So then you can let it go and you can move on. I end today's episode with just a simple reflection. What would your life look like if you stopped caring what happened or what that person did? Stop suppressing your anger. Allow yourself to feel it, move through it, and start caring what you have learned. This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself. Take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.